Hello and welcome. This is Show Studios Head to Head. We're going to talk about the men's fashion season and particularly Gucci. I'm Mimma Viglezio and I have an exceptional guest today, Stephen Jones. Hello, thank you for joining.
I'm thrilled to be here at Show Studio again.
Good. Have you been following the men's season from London to Paris?
Yes, because I'm really involved with it. I mean, not as involved with men's as I am with women's, but the men's is really the beginning of the season too.
Absolutely.
If you want to know what's going to happen in women's fashion, look at the men's shows. So.
Absolutely, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I said from Milan to Paris, but actually now we have from New York to Paris. So even men's week lasts almost a whole month. It's 4 cities. We want to start to talk about Gucci, not only because everybody knows now I'm a total fan, but also because it is influencing fashion and Milan, which is the only place where I've actually gone, was rather dull and sad in a way, but then Gucci happens and everybody wakes up because I think it's extraordinary. And before letting you go into it, I would like to say once again that I think the strength of Alessandro Michele, be it men or women or season or whatever he does, is that he has liberated fashion. He has given us a freedom to be who we want, how crazy or how classy we want, and that's extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what he's done at Gucci is fabulous. Fashion's always a continuum, and I worked with Ralph at Dior for many years, and that was very much about control and discipline, but fashion sort of needs to move on, and maybe Ralph left because fashion was moving on too, but suddenly Alessandro was in the right place at the right time. And the reason for fashion to make sense is it has to correspond with the times. There's no, the reason that the new look worked was because that's what people wanted. The reason that punk worked, that's what people wanted. And people wanted this sort of freedom. I mean, you said freedom of expression. And I think the freedom thing is extremely important as we talk about it today with Brexit and everything. And, what this really represents is the multicultural voyage around the world. It's not just Italian, it's not just English. I mean, there's little elements of punk and things which you saw coming through from the cruise show that was here in London. But I think it's very exciting. I mean, I remember once with Vivian, many, many years ago, there was not really a proper series of looks. What Vivian did was threw all the clothes in the middle of the room and said to all the models, pick up your own clothes and just create your own looks.
I love that.
And this is more studied, it's more controlled, but it's got that air of freedom and spontaneity.
Well, I like to hear what you just said, because it's exactly what I think. One of the things I prefer is that, be it this show or the cruise we've seen in London or the women's show last season, is that I have the feeling that he puts on the stage the world today. Men, women, punk, classic, eccentric, more normal, and he is telling you, this is what I have inside, these are my ideas. He's very honest in a way. These are my ideas, do what you want with it. And when people tell me, but who's wearing that? I say, everybody. Because then when you go to the stores, which is very consistent with what he's doing on the catwalk, you find everything there in the same way. So there's separate pieces together. There's no evening or day or season or man or women. It's all there, and you pick what you want and you wear it your own way. And what you said about Vivian is very interesting, because actually I'm convinced that's exactly what he does. He doesn't tell models wear what you want, but that's exactly the same.
But he's
same
telling
principle.
within his own mind, he's thinking, well, what would not go with that?
Yes,
so let's put that with that, because it doesn't go with it. I mean, that's why we're seeing at the moment is lilac and white striped trousers with the most genius hairdo ever in the world. I have to say, as a bald man, I am completely jealous of that girl. The glasses, so crazy.
So you like a bob?
Yeah, I mean, I love it because it's so sort of spooky and weird, and I mean, this was such a great look too. I love how suddenly there was a North Sea sou'wester and raincoat coming in the middle of the collection, or this one, which was like braces put into this little top. I mean, there's such a a sort of panoply. You know, it's like going into, there's a store here in London called Relic, which is...
I love Relic.
Which is a vintage store. They sell all sorts of... It's just
Fantastic.
like going into Relic. It's like looking through one of their rails, and you take a section of the rail and you put it on.
But it's true also what you said before. You said something about being in the right place at the right time. And as you know, Alessandra's worked in Gucci for many, many years, more than a decade.
Yeah.
And it was always lovely and very good. I mean, he was head of accessories first, and then I also think head of studio. So, you know, he was a senior person, but it was never his own idea.
Yeah.
And then I have the impression that the day that Marco Bizzarri went to him and said, okay, do you want to do it? He said yes. And then 15 years or how many years of ideas came out all at once, and they keep coming
and
out
normally
like
in the same outfit too.
Exactly. They keep coming out. Look at this. I mean, green and pink, I think is so chic, but they keep coming out, and they're so incredible, and I'm so enthusiastic about this because they're so incredible and so honest that everybody loves it. And even people that think, some people that understand fashion have said, but it's always the same. I completely disagree, because it's the same kind of style, of ideas, in a different way. You still find different things to buy and to wear.
I mean, it's funny people saying it's always the same. Well, yes, it is his look.
Exactly.
And how great, I mean, he doesn't believe in this season or the next season or the other season. I mean, like any good designer, they think it's a continuum. And, I mean, does it matter whether it's last season or next season? Most people are just starting to buy Gucci now for
That's
the first
the point.
time in a very long, you know, since, I'm sorry about Frida, you know, she did certain things too, but since Tom, people are really starting to buy Gucci now and understand it, not only as an accessory brand, even though he came from accessories, but as a clothing brand and just the total look. So, you know, he could do the same thing basically for 5 years, and by then everybody would have caught up. He will have moved on to a new thing. I mean, people always, funny enough, you mentioned that pink and green outfit, the suit. People actually picked up on that and said, oh yes, he can do plainer and simpler clothes, but it was pink and green. And I have to say, it's funny that in Europe, if anybody ever does pink and green, it's like this funny sign. As an English person, we're not really aware of it, but everybody thinks it's very an English combination, pink and green.
Because Englishmen wear pink?
No, it's sort of that whole world of like the Queen Mother and a strong pastel colour, and they see it as being very English, as opposed to Italian, which might be rich or deeper colour, as opposed to Paris, which might be black or pink or one of those combinations.
Yeah, but Alessandro always said that he's an Anglophile. He really loves England and the style, the eccentricity of
I don't know
English
him.
gentleman.
I've never met him, but
He's a lovely person.
when he was doing his cruise show, they did the rehearsals just around the corner from where we are now in Victoria House. And I didn't actually go to the show, but I went to the after party and I met all the people from his studio, and they said, well, we walk past your store every day, and we always looked in the window and we think, oh, thank God for individuality and creativity in British fashion. You know, so it was a great
he's a
compliment.
fan of all of this.
Yeah.
So, but I think, as you said, you know, there's a lot in here that can be easily bought and worn by almost anybody. You know, I mean, you can make the trouser a little bit longer. You can wear that coat without, you know, with maybe trousers instead of just socks. Yeah. So I think it's very clever, because he doesn't think like that, but it's very clever because it's incredibly entertaining and creative and influencing everybody. At the same time, it's very commercial, and people at the beginning were saying, well, let's see if it sells. Well, I've got news, it actually does sell. I mean, I know, and it sells really well.
Yeah, I mean, I know certain people don't really like it that much. I mean, I know certain retailers who are very famous and got a very famous store in Milan who really don't like it because they feel as though he hasn't delivered a new silhouette or something. But I think it's his decorative ability and the combination and the fact that he uses a ton of accessories, which is part influenced by the fact that he was the head of the accessory studio. So all his friends, it's a very different dynamic, because normally if you're a dress designer, you know, you have to rule your world. It has to be, you know, you're at the top of the hill and you have to say, this is what the colour's going to be, this is what the accessory is going to be. I think unusually what's happened is that he's allowed everybody who he works with to come to fruition as well. And I think that's a freedom in his control of the studio, freedom in his control of the Gucci world. and the fact he wants to embrace all sorts of different things. I mean, if you look at those 3 outfits, each of those are telling such a different story.
Completely.
I mean,
That's
if you
what's
look at
interesting.
the T-shirt at the that could, that T-shirt could almost be like from Sex or Seditionaries, that very much Vivian language. The bag is like 70s Gucci, and that's what also Tom Ford zoomed in on. I mean, it's weird how, everybody talks about these big houses, how the houses continue in a continuum and different designers sort of come and go, but the house is more important. And that's the common, what the managers say nowadays. But that's absolutely not true. When people buy into these extremely expensive clothes, they want to know the person behind it. They want to know the language of that the person is speaking to them. So it is all about personality, character, foibles, idiosyncrasies. I mean, if you look at any of these, that is so my favourite outfit, the stripy one with the knitted intarsia top.
I stop you here because you said something too important to let go. I agree and disagree. I think people want to buy something with a personality behind, but I also think that the very big brands like Gucci can survive thanks to the name and the glamour around the name for a certain time. However, we have seen that from Tom to Alessandro, there was a time where Gucci was still doing. I was there, so I could see the figures, and Frida has done a good job in a sense. There was a time where it was doing really, really well.
And actually, to try and follow Tom, I mean, that was such a nightmare for anybody at all.
But also, the problem with Frida, I think, at the end, was that what she was doing wasn't sustainable for the long term, because it was too much of one style. As you said, one silhouette. When people say he hasn't changed the silhouette, but then you can't do that all the time because that's your silhouette. What he does, which is genius, apart of the print, the color, the embellishment.
Look at that. Hang on, pause. Look at the collar shape on that jacket.
Amazing.
I mean, how bonkers is that?
It's fantastic.
I know it's silly and it's all about fashion, but that makes my day worth living.
I understand. But also what is great commercially is that you go into the store. As a woman, I went and bought some trousers. There were like 5 silhouettes of trousers. You find the one that suits you, that fits you.
Yeah.
Not only you like the color or the shape, but and that's genius, because you're still very proud in wearing pink Gucci, but then it's a shape that works with your body. So, it's very interesting, and I think everybody's influenced by the phenomenon of Alessandro Michele right now.
Oh yes, I mean,
everybody's doing color. Everybody's doing more is more, and
I mean, it's extraordinary. I mean, it's great, and that's how fashion works as well. I'm not saying that any of the designers who are copying are less designers because they're influenced by him, but the thing is about fashion that you're in and you're out. I remember Susie Menkes a long time ago telling me about a photograph that she'd seen, and there's only one photograph that exists, of Poiret and Chanel. And one
together?
Together.
Okay.
And one was the past and one was the future. And even though Poiret was this fantastic designer, his time was gone. And every single designer has their time in the limelight. It's so funny, if you go down somewhere like Bond Street, you'll see a whole series of names, and they're this month's names, and next month there'll be a whole series of different names, and in 5 years none of those names will be there, but apart from Asprey or Garrard or whatever. But
maybe.
This is the thing about fashion, it does change all the time.
But do you think that if you're able to change with this, if you're able to keep relevant, you can be the one who's in the spotlight for longer?
I think it's very, very difficult.
What about Karl Lagerfeld?
I mean, the funny thing is that Karl, when he first went to Chanel, was like a big hit. And then it went a little bit quieter because other things took over. I mean, people are sort of adoring him now because he is a marketing genius. And also they know that he hasn't... Sorry,
go ahead,
Karl.
you can say
he hasn't got so many years to go. He's not at the beginning of the career. Maybe he's going to design for another 5 years, another 10 years or whatever. So they're enjoying that moment of Karl's fashion authority, because the thing is, he does know what he's doing, and he does make sort of, in a way...
Oh, he does.
Yeah, the perfect dress.
So,
and with the Chanel money, with the money from the Wertheimers, and, Chanel No. 5 is the biggest selling perfume around the world, so they've got things to finance the big show in Cuba. You know, it's great and it all works. And also, I think when other things are coming and going, people like to know at some area there's a consistency. I'd love to know what Carl thinks of this, because it's very the opposite to Hedi Slimane, who Carl changed his body for completely.
Worked on a silhouette.
Yeah.
I mean, he changed men's fashion in a way, but he worked completely on a silhouette. And when we've seen what he's done with Saint Laurent in the past 5 years, I mean, I was one of those protecting it and liking it for what it was, but it's one silhouette. You can fit or not. I mean, there's no, or maybe I will, you know what I mean? This is the opposite.
I don't think I really liked Hedi at Saint Laurent. I mean, I know he's a genius and he did a fantastic product, and I had lots of friends, especially in America, who would buy a $15,000 leather jacket because 30 years beforehand they had a cheap leather jacket. Now they have the money to afford to buy an expensive one. But I think that was the client.
I think that all this goes with what I experienced in Milan. Milan was very classic, and I mean, there are brands that produce a fantastic, beautifully made suit, but as Angelo Flaccavento said, is it really worth going to a show to see, you know, like 5 blue and then 3 greys? And
I think it is, because most of the world...
There's no magic.
No, most of the world needs clothing. They actually don't need fashion. That's the thing. They don't need fashion with a capital F.
Why a show? I'm not saying why making them. Why putting up a show?
Because doing a fashion show, as opposed to everybody who does films or whatever. Sorry, Nick. You know, often they don't work, and a show is a really efficient way of showing a lot of garments in a short amount of time to a lot of people, and that's why shows do work, and that's why the idea of a fashion show has existed for so long, because there's something which is sort of magical about it.
But don't you think that when it's a tiny bit boring, you are going against yourself? I mean, you're destroying some image around your brand. I mean, don't you think that...
I mean, it's boring for you, but maybe, you know...
But the show is for me. No, customers, they don't go to shows. Well, they can see them online, but...
No, but say
the
for
show
example,
is for a buyer. The show is for journalists.
If you're a buyer for Harrods or Selfridges or something like that, yes, of course, you're going to buy some of this. You'd want to buy some of this, and you probably buy some Dries as well, which is like this, but a little bit easier, but the same sort of crazy colour mix. Yeah. But as well, you know, you want to get a Canali suit, and you want to buy all those more classic things.
Absolutely, and I think Canali makes probably the best suits in the world, but you can go and buy them in the showroom. I'm not saying, I'm not really taking side here, I'm still trying to decide, but it's interesting what you say, that people need clothes, and so they need to see...
But, I mean, people need clothes and people need fashion, and I don't know what the proportion is. You know, if you're a real fashion bunny, you've probably got 100% fashion. Well, you're probably getting your socks from Marks and Spencer's, or your underwear from Marks and Spencer's. What percentage
Where
of
do
mine
you get your socks from?
Where do I get my socks from? Everywhere.
Okay.
Which am I wearing at the moment? Oh, really boring one, black one.
It's a pity that our viewers, they can't see the colours you're wearing because they're really interesting.
But this is a com shirt, and I'm wearing my old 1979 bondage trousers and my Dior vintage hat from
Dior by John Galliano.
Yeah. And this was the Rasta collection.
Let's fly to Paris, because I think Paris was rather interesting. I mean, a little bit more interesting creatively. I mean, we had to jump London, and we don't have a lot of time. And in London, maybe we should mention Claire Wales-Pommer, who also won the...
Yeah. I mean, she was amazing.
She's amazing.
And I don't know if you know, we didn't talk about this, but I worked with her this season. I made a few hats for her.
Tell us.
And she was incredible. I mean, she came to see me, and she just sat and talked. And I listened for about 2 hours, and it was amazing to see her passion and her drive and focus, which was staggering in somebody so young.
But then you can see it,
and you can see it in the
show, which was incredible.
And you know, it's so funny because people always say to me, you know, how do you become a successful designer? I just always say, you have to take yourself and make a dress out of it. And make a suit out of it. It's like you don't have to do anything else. It's silly to do anything. You just take yourself and make a dress out of it. Make a dress out of your character. Because eventually, that's all you have. And whether it's fashionable or not fashionable, or whether it's this season or not season, that's the best thing you've got.
But that's when I say honest. I mean, if people that try to do something to please the customer or the press, or to look like this and that, it doesn't work.
No.
as you say,
especially when you're at the very beginning.
And I think she delivered an incredible show, and I think she's going to go far. And I think, in a way, she's contributing in a less bonker way to change the idea of men's fashion.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree with this, but I think she's doing that as well. And I'm glad to say that she's a woman. Which, it's quite interesting.
What, for me, was the most... I mean, of course, there's the styling and the design and the casting and the fact that she had Gainsbury and Whiting doing the show production and things like that in a beautiful space, was actually the clothes, the quality of the tailoring, which is so difficult to achieve, but she did it.
She did it.
So, and whether it's the money she's got or the organisation or the passion, whatever, it's so easy to make bad menswear because you see it, and the simpler it is, the more difficult it is to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But it was a standout show for me, and I was very proud to be.
I'd like to go to another show where you were very much involved. So let's go to Paris and let's go to Thom Browne, who
which
put
was
up
day before
an
yesterday.
Incredible show, which was not only incredible as a show but also as clothes.
Yeah.
But where you were completely involved. So I don't say a word more, and I'll let you explain to us what happened there.
Well, it was sort of slightly about surfing, but not. And what you're not getting from these pictures, there's the guy on the top left, that's actually a scuba outfit, but it's all pieced together, so it looks like
the
a
black
suit.
one.
The black one is actually a real scuba outfit, so you could look as though you were surfing in your...
I can see it from here.
In your Thom Browne suit. And then all the other guys came out, and they were wearing these giant surfing outfits, which they then unzipped, and they revealed these outfits. And these outfits, they looked as though they were separate parts, but in fact they were all one thing, and they had a giant zip down the back, and they unzipped all of those, and then underneath they had like a knitted sort of 1920s swimsuit.
Like an oilskin, I mean, exactly what you wear to go diving.
Yeah. And then they all went off, and they all came back with surfboards with the same colour.
Yeah.
I mean, it was with all the starving children in the world, you think, well, what's the sense in that? But it was this fantastic,
she just killed it.
Decorative, wonderful thing. And in a funny way, quite like Alessandra Michele, in the sort of effervescence and fun in our appearance. And that's what I loved about the show.
But so are those very complicated zipped up clothing wearable for a normal guy who needs
they
to
are
wake
wearable,
up
and you
go to
can
work?
buy all those things separately and individually.
Okay.
And you can see that around this entire scene, which was a black sand beach with a black palm tree coming out, it was being circled by seagulls and parrots and a shark. So it was this it was almost like a Lee Bowery performance. You're not really sure what was going on, but hey, it looked great.
And so did you do the hats or
the
head covers? How do we call what do we
These
call
were the swimming hats, which actually do work, and then they had sunglasses on. So we did 30 of these, and then we made all these bird heads too.
That's also your making.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that. So he said to you, I want someone to look like a shark.
Well,
and you went off and designed the shark head?
We got together about 6 weeks ago or something, and the idea for the show really hadn't formulated at that point, but I did a big research on swim caps, of what they were like from the turn of the century all the way up to now, and lifesavers, and how they are in America versus Australia, all those things. And then we worked out the idea of birds. It was like when you're on a beach, what are the things which are moving? And of course it's a little bit Tippi Hedren, and
lovely.
The idea of seagull, but it was, in a funny way, it doesn't matter what the sense was, it doesn't matter what the meaning was. It's just, was it entertaining and fun?
Will it actually then produce
everything
to be sold? Maybe not the shark head.
But funny enough, we have real collectors for Thom Browne, and we
so
have inquiries, so that everything gets produced. Absolutely, everything gets produced. And for example, the guy on the left, of course, this is all joined together in one outfit, but yes, there's a little waiter's jacket with white piping around the edge and white shorts, and
that will be sold separately.
Yeah,
in the show it was one thing.
In the show it was one
it's
thing.
Very interesting. I really that's probably one of my favorite shows of the season.
And it was the last show of the season.
And it was the last, so it was a very beautiful conclusion for a quite dark season where things happened that we didn't like, but we cannot talk politics now. We still have to talk a little bit about fashion.
we can talk politics.
Well, let's talk about Kim Jones, an Englishman in Paris who did an amazing show. I thought the Vuitton show was a highlight.
The reason, that John Galliano or Vivienne Westwood or Alexander McQueen or myself all went to show in Paris was because we felt more European than we felt British. And I know Nick still feels like that, and we feel like that. And Kim Jones was also somebody, you know, who has gone and has taken the helm of this huge house with, you know, 300 boutiques worldwide, I don't know how many, and showed this amazing show which was about travel, which was about movement, and he combined sort of research on Africa and the Chapman brothers, some of the Chapman brothers drawings
some
as
prints,
well.
yes. I think this is quite incredible because he was in the, I mean, he works for a house that needs to be commercial also, and he manages to go through all the needs and the thing he has to do, and yet deliver creativity.
That's the Chapman brothers print.
Very desirable clothes. But I also think here the silhouette and the elegance and the looks of this show were incredible. I'm going to compare to what we saw the other day. I was on the panel on the Valentino show, which was quite praised by the press. Unfortunately, I wasn't there, so I didn't see it from close. But I thought it was a tiny bit so what? And this one, who could be in that direction because it's quite normal and simple, actually it's not. It's full of incredible ideas. It's a beautiful silhouette. It's very chic yet very creative. And it's Vuitton and Kim Jones at the same time. So I think he did a great job.
Yeah, I mean, some of the clothes were really extraordinary. For example, he had sort of punkish mohair jumpers, a bit like Vivienne, Vivienne inspiration again, which were brushed and combed and coloured like the front of a springbok or an ibex. So he was really mixing up that language of punk with the language of Africa.
And travel, which is the theme of the season and the theme of Vuitton. Everybody was doing the travel theme this season, but Vuitton has had it for 150 years. So.
Yeah, I mean, you know, travel's always an element at Vuitton, and
this show is so desirable, isn't it?
Yeah, I want all
and the styling as well. Who's doing the styling for Vuitton? Do you know? Okay, it doesn't matter. Sorry, bad question. Were you there? Did you see this clothes from clothes?
Yeah, I was at the show. Actually, the next outfit coming up was fantastic because it was a plastic raincoat.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to see it, but this was a silk shirt. But there's plastic raincoats printed with the LV thing, and they're, you know.
Ray Kawakubo did plastic
plastic raincoats.
The King is Dead.
And in fact, in Tom Brown, there were lots of plastic raincoats in the
quite a
showroom
trend.
too. Yeah, here we are.
Here it is.
Fantastic.
Yeah, a little bit low good for my taste, but I see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's.
I prefer it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's still very low good, but yeah, this probably will be sold out in a second, right?
Yeah.
But so all in all, I mean, we.
This was one of the amazing mohair jumpers, which was done like.
I love those colourful men's trousers that are coming up, popping up everywhere. I think I can't wait to see the streets full of men with yellow and pink and green and baby blue trousers.
Yeah, which are not Hackett.
I know. I think it's very good. I think it brings some happiness in some doom times, and
I mean, it's certainly, you know, guys wearing colour is great,
it's
and
beautiful.
You know, guys.
But as you said, you're British, and you guys have done it forever here. While in Europe, men are more into blues and greys and black, aren't they?
I don't know. It all depends if they're doing, you know, a British look. For example, you know, Bessé Berger in France will certainly wear colour, and they'll be wearing, you know, red trousers with a yellow jacket because they think it looks very English. In the same way that the pink and green thing for a girl is perceived as being very English.
Oh, you were not talking about Bessé Berger the brand, but Bessé Berger Bon Chic Bon Genre, the type of people from 16th arrondissement in Paris. Yeah, with a little mohair here in light blue, you know.
Which sort of makes my skin crawl. But,
exactly.
You know,
so probably not the best example, but I see what you mean.
Look at this sweater. So cool.
That's very beautiful. That's a bit ethnic African, right?
Yeah. And I'm sure that's going to be knocked off, you know, in a second by many department stores on the high street.
Yes. We have another minute to just briefly
and these outfits are a bit bondagey too. You know,
I would like to mention Rick Owens as well. Yeah. I think he did an incredible job. Much more difficult than seeing the streets, but very interesting also as I listened to him explaining it, and it's so spiritual, you know, this idea of the pyramid, like everything is big in on the bottom and it becomes skinnier and it goes up, including the hair, and it goes to the sky somehow. and it's very softer. It's softer than usual. It's flying, it's floating. I thought it was an incredible show and a master in skills of tailoring in a certain
he's
way.
Completely different again, but he's so fantastically true to himself. And the extraordinary thing about Rick is he does that with Michelle Lamy, his wife, and he creates something which is so absolutely personal. And in a funny way, he doesn't sort of shout about it.
No, he doesn't.
It's very, very discreet.
I think he has a very...
discreet shade of like acid yellow.
I think he has a very loyal customer base, and he doesn't need to shout it. But what I liked particularly here is that those boys, they really look like girls, or girls that look like boys. I mean, he really managed to put together the androgyny and the, like, look at them. I mean, they're boys, but it's so good. It's so good. There's no gender at all here. They're even genderless completely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, clothes which, this is one of the tools that designers have. Sometimes you express gender and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you express femininity, sometimes you express, it's the same thing as, is it futuristic, is it historic? It's just another tool in the big pot of, in the cauldron that you make next season's collection.
Neutral. It's neutral as far as time and gender, I think, and that's what fascinates me.
And it's not past or future. It's so weird when people say, is it new, is it old? I mean, I think those things is a way of describing fashion. That's old.
Exactly, that's so old-fashioned, actually. Yeah. But I like there was before, we've seen it before, these silhouettes where they really go up like a pyramid, and I think not easy for a man to wear. You have to be quite self-assured.
Yeah, I mean, also you have to be
aesthetically.
Quite tall and quite young.
Yeah, well,
sadly, which is why I'm not wearing clothes at the moment.
Well, I think also Rick Owens was someone that needed to be mentioned in this. In this season.
Yeah, I mean, he's an individual and does his own thing in the way that Balenciaga was, really.
Oh, we haven't mentioned the Balenciaga show.
Or
Incredible
Sandra Rhodes
show as
did
well.
her own thing.
Yeah.
I thought Balmain looked like Sandra Rhodes with all those embroidered ponchos.
Yes, I'm probably less of.
Oh, I wasn't. I'm not a fan.
I thought that the Balenciaga, the first ever Balenciaga men's show, was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And it was very clever, not only beautiful and interesting, but very clever because it, again, mixed. It was managing to mixing smartly creativity and wearability.
Yeah.
And he changed the silhouette because the shapes of that coat and those jackets, imagine how many wide shoulder jackets we will see next season.
All of them.
Every brand, from every high street, and that's going to be probably the thing we're going to see the most.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but you see the guys on the right, they've got really narrow shouldered ones, so there was that variety as well.
Yes.
But there'll be some big ones out there.
That was also one of my favorite shows.
Yeah. Look at the one in the middle. Wow.
Fantastic.
He's going to have to go sideways going through a door, isn't he?
Yeah, probably. He's so skinny that it's still quite narrow.
Yeah.
I think we have to wrap up, unless you have a final words to say about men's fashion.
About men's fashion.
I'm going to say goodbye.
I'm going to say hello to men's fashion.
Okay, and goodbye.